Good evening. Welcome to the Town of North Andover's Finance Committee meeting. It is Tuesday, May 25th, 2021. Pursuant to Governor Baker's March 12, 2020 order suspending certain provisions of the Open Meeting Law, General Law, Chapter 30A, Section 18, and the Governor's March 15, 2020 order imposing strict limitation in the number of people that may gather in one place, this meeting of the North Andover Finance Committee will be conducted via remote participation to the greatest extent possible. Specific information in the general guidelines for remote participation by members of the public and or parties with a right and a requirement to attend this meeting can be found on the town's website at northandoverma.gov. For this meeting, members of the public who wish to watch the meeting may do so on their televisions by tuning to Comcast Channel 99 or Verizon Channel 28 or online at northandovercam.org. No in-person attendance of members of the public will be permitted, but every effort will be made to ensure that the public can adequately access the proceedings in real time via technological means. In the event that we are unable to do so, despite best efforts, we will post on the Town of North Andover website an audio or video recording, transcript, or other comprehensive record of proceedings as soon as possible after the meeting. It is now 7:01 and I call the meeting to order. I am going to do a roll call attendance. Ed McMillan.
Here.
Chris Allen.
Here.
Dustin Silk.
Here.
Regina Keene.
Here.
Thomas Ringler.
Here.
Donovan O'Connell.
Here.
Jen Luz. Here. Excellent. And Kevin Foley will be unable to attend this evening. Calling the meeting to order, roll call attendance. And now I'd like us to please stand for the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you. And for the record, I would also like to note that we have Superintendent Dr. Greg Gilligan present, Dr. James Mealy, the Assistant Superintendent, Helen Picard, the Chair of the School Committee, and we also, I believe, Lynn Savage is on the call as well, the Finance Director for the Town of North Andover. Okay. So it is now 7:03. I'm going to check my email one more time before I declare that there is no public comment, just to be safe. And I have not received any public comment. So we can move through that quickly. I would like to also make note that this will be our last virtual meeting. Going forward, our meetings will be in person. And for those of you who may be watching, our meetings will be broadcast now on the Gov channel, not the Ed channel. So the channels will be switched. We were previously on this channel just for ease of viewing because of the recording situation and everyone being virtual, but that will now switch. So if you are looking for our meetings after today, they will resume being found on the Gov channel that CAM has. All right. Now we are going to move to the item on our agenda, update regarding COVID-related federal funding for the Town of North Andover. So if anyone is watching or for the committee, we received a memo from Town Manager Rodriguez basically saying that there is some guidance regarding the American Rescue Plan funds. The town is believed to be receiving $9.1 million as part of these rescue funds. I don't know, Lynn, if you are on and want to briefly touch on this.
Hi, good evening. How is everybody?
Good.
Like outlined in Melissa's letter, there are some very brief guidelines. There's really nothing that is giving us any major direction other than the fact that we are getting $9.1 million. So it's a little frustrating because that's a lot of money and we've got to be out, I'm sure everybody wants to spend it because we need it, but It's how to spend it and how to spend it properly and record it properly and track it. So other than the memo that she sent you that we were getting that amount of money, I really don't have any further information to provide you. I wish I did. It would, because then that would
Make life easier for you.
quite a bit, because I'm stressing out over this a lot because it's a lot of money. But as soon as we do get further information, hopefully by maybe your next meeting, we'll have some more guidance. I know I received a couple bulletins today from Division of Local Services that I have to go through that touches upon some of this money too. So I'll definitely update you guys on your next meeting with more information as it comes available.
Okay, thank you.
Yep.
Can I ask a quick question? Lynn?
Go ahead, Chris.
I just want to know if I'm mistaken when I read this. It doesn't look like there's anything in here designated for schools or education. There's nothing at all. Okay.
That's what it appears.
So I'm looking at it go, Sasha and I were like, wait, is it? And I just wanted to see like, no. So, okay, that's interesting.
Yeah, there's quite some different categories. So that's what's concerning and very hard for us to understand how we're going to spend it on these specific categories.
Right. I got lots of ideas, but that was.
Yeah, it would be nice if it was designated, there was a specific category for schools, and there really isn't. So.
Yeah. Okay. All right. So
we
we
have
don't
a designation of money that's coming down the line or down the pipeline that will be for schools. I don't know of that. So.
Right. Okay.
Yep.
Well, we'll stay tuned then. That's all we can do, right?
All we can. Yep. I agree.
Thank you.
Okay.
Thank you.
And there are items though that could be used for school needs, just not anything that's specifically outlined for education, correct? Just to be clear for those who haven't seen it. Okay. So that for those who are watching or for the rest of the committee, you were sent that memo, but it also is in our meeting folder for today. So you can take a look at that if you need a refresher. All right, so we'll move forward because there's not much to talk about. We're still just waiting for additional guidance. I would like to allow the guests of tonight to take the floor. So Superintendent Gill, again, Assistant Superintendent Neely, if you want to take over the screen and take over, thank you so much for coming. We really appreciate it.
Well, thanks for having us, and I really appreciate having Dr. Mealy here. He's in charge of finance and operations, and it's terrific, as always, to have our chair here, Helen Picard.
Yeah, thank you, Helen.
And having talked to the town manager about this guidance that's preliminary, that's coming in across, it's been coming in dribs and drabs. We discussed it, and we talked about the preliminary information that funding may be used to aid disproportionately impacted populations, including programs that mitigate the impact of COVID on educational programs and programs that mitigate the impacts of COVID on childhood health and welfare. So, we'll continue to work together to flush that out. But I think that's really important. So I'm really thrilled to have my team here tonight. And, we're here to present and talk about recovery services. It's been a challenging year with the pandemic across the Commonwealth and the entire country. I feel fortunate. We have a tremendous team. We have unbelievable folks working. And it's been great to have our doors open all year, with the exception of a few times we had to close down. But I can tell you that I have never been more thrilled than the day we got everyone back into the buildings. So we're very excited about it. But we know that learning losses are likely to show up differently across different grade levels and subjects. With intensive recovery needs concentrated, particularly, in the early ages, and then in specific areas across the curriculum, across the grade spans. But I thought what was really important is to talk about probably the most pressing matter when we talk about returning, and we've been in school all year, as I like to say, but is social emotional learning. Strong, healthy relationships are the single greatest resource for supporting readiness to learn, resiliency, and mental and emotional well-being. And, the fact that we're getting our kids back into school and the fact that all together and seeing peers they haven't, I cannot emphasize enough that we need to take care of the mental health and the well-being of all students and continue to do so as we move forward. Because if we can't take care of that first, and attend to that, students oftentimes have trouble attending to the curriculum. You have to feel good about going to school, feel safe, and get into that routine. So I think we're building momentum now. The recovery services, we have talked tonight a little bit about our planning team, social emotional learning, assessment and data. How do we know where we are? Professional development and curriculum resources, move it forward, which is the staffing piece of this, the budget, and then some summer programming. Next slide, Jim. All right, so the planning team, I mean, it's been quite a busy spring. As you know, we opened up on April 5th. We got back with the elementary, and then the 27th and 28th, I believe, for the middle and the high school. But central office has been working so closely with the principals. The principals have been working so closely with the staff, particularly around gathering data through our assessments. The curriculum coordinators and coaches that we do have now have played a really big role in terms of where we are, some of what progress we've made this year, and they work closely with the staff. And we've been fortunate. I was able to bring on Dr. Kurt Bates as a consultant. Kurt's career spans over 45 years in education. He's a retired superintendent. His last stop was Boxborough, but he works with about 8 or 9 local districts, and he's been really tremendous helping us from the beginning through now. I think I emphasized this pretty early on, but if you saw the first school committee meeting, this presentation at the school committee meeting, Nikki Murphy, our director of social emotional learning, talked about the data she's collected and the screeners that really give us information so that we know we have to attend to these needs. Next slide, Jim. All right. So how do we know where we are? We continue to assess kids with some of our standardized testing, mid-year assessments at elementary, and we report those out. We're in the process of end-of-the-year assessments, measures of achievement progress. That's our MAP testing, and that's K through 8, and we do that in math and ELA. We use other assessments like DIBELS with our younger grades. We have data teams at each school that meet and get together, and they do this ongoing work to find out, hey, what do we want kids to know and be able to do? And then we use, we look at how they're doing on their assessments, and then we look at, well, if there's something going really well, how do we share those best practice? If not, how do we intervene and then continue to progress monitor? And last but not least, around assessment, we partnered up with Boston College, and we'll be doing some training with our administrators this summer around data training. We had previously been trying to work with Harvard and DataWise, but with COVID, that relationship didn't come together like we thought it would. So we're pretty excited about this, training around data with Boston College this summer. So part of the plan is really, you'll see in some of these positions, because the positions are here to support teachers and kids. I mean, that's why we need them. This is the time to do it. But tier 1, when we talk about coaches, they're really helping teachers build capacity to provide interventions in the classroom. And that's what they mean by tier 1. We have a pretty comprehensive professional development program. We'll continue with that, focused on that in terms of the curriculum and universal design for learning, looking at data, looking at our literacy information, and responsive classrooms. So these will all be areas of professional development throughout the course of the summer and ongoing for the yearly plan. But take note too, the responsive classroom piece, that's an important one. It's a small stipended position that we're looking at, and that is, morning meeting, building those social emotional learning skills. Next slide, Jim. So what are we looking to do? I mean, we feel very fortunate. I feel very fortunate. I have to thank the town manager for her support, because a lot of communities do not have the ability to make a difference and go out and try to do these things. And now's the time. So, at the different levels, at the Bradstreet, we're looking at reading interventionists and a coach. Elementary, we're looking at coaches. Now, remember, coaches have build capacity. They're the ones that help teachers with the strategies and the best practices that make a difference for kids. Interventionists, they work with students who may be struggling, and they also work with other students that might only need, one quick pull out or a little bit of in-class help to really get back to where they need to be. Social workers, a social worker at the elementary is, critical, I think, obviously. You've probably read the paper and seen the research out there that, the mental health needs of our kids, it's been a challenge. I mentioned the responsive classroom facilitators, and then, a math director working with all of our interventionists, our coaches, seeing that transition from elementary to middle and K to 1 to the elementaries. Really important position, along with English learner teachers, which was, some of you might know, is formerly ELL. And at the high school, we're looking at interventionists and ELA and math. NAMS, related arts, special education position, and that's what an ETL is, an evaluation team leader, and a social worker. And when you see positions like, again, at the high school, a social worker, an evaluation team leader, teachers, school psychologists, many of these positions associated with special education are a result of, during COVID, we kept working. I have really kudos to our executive director of special education, Marcy Bacuzzi, because she did a tremendous job getting kids in person last summer, plans for this summer, but throughout the course of the year, continuing to work with families in special education. And, there are more meetings that are coming up and backed up a little bit. So these things play a critical role in terms of us moving forward. Dr. Mealy, you want to take us through a quick run through, because I think I've kind of hit on these positions, but no, of the budget slide.
Yeah, I just had to take myself off of mute. So Dr. Gilligan just mentioned all these positions here. They are all in one place, the way that Finance Committee wants to see them. So you can see the total budget. All the positions are here in the FTE level. 6 responsive classroom facilitators, that's a stipend, so that's why it does not reflect an FTE. But you can see all the rest. And in conversation with the town manager, we decided that the proper benefit amount to set aside, not all of these positions, or the people who fill these positions will choose to take health insurance, but we set aside $15,000 per FTE just in case, so that cost will be covered. These are all one-time positions outside of the normal operating budget. So they do not have an OPEB liability associated with them, but there is a possibility of health insurance being chosen and the town having to pay that. So that's why that's there. And then the remaining funds are being spent on curriculum resources such as decodable text, Dr. Gilligan mentioned, and the professional development he has mentioned. And that's where we get the $2,590,500, just short of the $2.6 million.
And Jim, you can stay on that slide there, but I also think it's really important. One of the things that, we're also looking to do in terms of programming, it really ties into our values of, what we believe in is, leveraging partnerships this summer, running an acceleration academy that's really targeted to students in August, staffed by highly trained professionals in order to get kids caught up. Special education summer school, North Andover High School credit recovery, the Stevens Memorial North Andover Public Schools summer reading partnership, as well as something new this summer called the Math Challenge. We will continue to have kids, and I do want kids to get out and about. They've got to have a normal summer, but they'll have the ability to keep their Chromebooks so that there'll be some free online programming available. And then, we'll continue to feed kids this summer through the families that need it. Our community programs, Excel Enrichment through Rick Gallant, will continue to provide everything from sports camps to enrichment to academics. And then more importantly, where a ton of our high school kids work is summer fun. And I think Rick Gorman, who I've been connecting with quite a bit lately, talking about the summer, I think they filled up in the first 3 hours quicker than they did in the first 3 days from last year. So it's a busy summer, but, most importantly, when you look at this during the school year, this is when we have all of our kids. They're there. This is our chance to make a difference because we need to get them up to speed for those who may have experienced learning loss. We have to take care of their social emotional needs. We have to provide a stable environment with predictable routines. So we're pretty excited about it. And I think last but not least, again, I can't emphasize the partnership with the town and the way we've worked with, I meet weekly with Melissa and the way that Dr. Mealy and Lynn work. And I know Helen in our board, we've had the tri-board meeting and very collaborative. But, these positions are one-year positions, but they fit into our plan moving forward. As we continue to look then to FY23, which we have published, looking ahead, many of these positions are in there. There's similar positions in terms of special education, social worker, EL, reading teachers, enrichment programming, et cetera. So it's really right in line with that. But now's the time to make a difference. And this is what our recovery looks like. So Dr. Mealy or Chair Picard, do you have anything you'd like to add?
I do not.
Not at this time.
Great. Well, thank you so much for that presentation. I'm sure the committee has some questions, so I will open it up if someone wants to ask their first question. If not, I can ask a question. I have a couple.
This is Regina. I have a question. How are you? Thank you for that presentation. It looks like there's a great number of positions and good use of spending the money. I guess I have a question of how you're going to decide which students to target with those resources, because it looks like a lot of resources, and certainly saying, $2+ million is a lot of money. But if it's really one psychologist at the middle school, for example, and there's an entire school, or I don't remember now that the slide's down exactly the number, but how are you going to figure out who needs what resource? You know what I mean? Like every kid's different. Every kid's got their own, way of displaying that they have a need, I guess. So.
Yeah, Regina, really great question. So we have a lot of systems and structures in place now where we get flagged or screened where people that might need help, and we'll continue to do that. This is not to supplant that. This is to enhance on top of that. So, it is based on need. And so things like when I talked about Nikki Murphy, she talked about some of these social emotional learning screeners that may give an indication that, this is an area that we have to focus on programmatically as a district with something like responsive classroom and morning meeting in elementary. And we also have other information and based on need of, okay, there may be a school that particularly needs more support in terms of, they may need, have more 51As or more issues that families need support and have to be supported in getting outside resources. So we have data on that. And then more importantly, tied to the kind of the academic piece is this gives us an opportunity programmatically to support schools and grades across levels with the, particularly with the coaching and building capacity, but also we know disproportionately that students who receive special education services, English language learners, students who are on free or reduced lunch or Title I students. And we also know that students in general, they're going to need this additional support and structure too. So, it's a balance of trying to meet all of those different needs based on the data we have and the information to do that. So.
Thank you.
I had a question, Dr. Gilligan. You mentioned that you do some assessments and you do some benchmarking. This is obviously a COVID year. So, these kids versus the class last year, I know there's probably some variation from year to year, but in a non-COVID year, do we have any, translate so we understand it? Does the average fifth grader does he have like a 20% gap in English, 30% gap in math versus where you would expect them in a non-COVID year? Do we have some baseline to figure out how far behind we are?
Yeah, so we have quite a bit. We have quite a bit of data. So some of it is like the map testing that I mentioned. We have different cohorts, but we can also track. I'm just getting a little feedback from somebody here. I'm not sure. You okay?
Ed, yeah, thanks.
Oh, sorry, Ed. Yeah, Ed. So we have assessments that, we can look at back of the year and we can see how a kid did from one grade to the next. We have assessments that we can look at grade levels, and there are variations, and because sometimes they're different cohorts when you look at it that way. But we also can track the kids just like we've always tracked the kids, and it's what's most important about that kind of data is it's like, we do things like instructional rounds, almost like doctors do. So when we get information on kids and we get data and information, we can see trends across the district in areas that may need additional support. But we can also see individually, particularly students who struggle when we talk about interventionists, about what are we going to prescribe as an intervention? We have to progress monitor it. And, we have to really keep track of that data and say, have they made progress? Have they not? And if they're not, what are we going to do about it? And we have to continue. So it's ongoing monitoring with these different types of assessments that we give. But they give us information where, the trends are, we're behind a little bit in some areas, and not as far behind in others as we may have thought. So, it's a challenge in the sense of, from a district standpoint or a grade level standpoint, there's unique cohorts of kids, but how do we meet those? So we have to meet them programmatically with, the PD and the best practices. And we also have to intervene for the kids who are struggling. So, that's where we're kind of at. I hope that answers that question for you.
Ed, can I just jump in for a second? We have had hours and hours of presentations on assessments at every level of the schools at school committee. Starting way back in December or January, we got presentations on assessment of what was expected at the high school and middle school level. I think it was in March we had our first presentation on K through 5 progress. Then we had presentations on SEL progress. We had presentations on K through 2 literacy progress. We had presentations on 3 through 5. We had presentations on math updates. So we've had probably 7, 8 or more hours of presentations with charts and figures and the whole 9 yards. So the information has really been shared with us and with the public in that way. And I know you don't need that level of detail, but I think the question you ask is very good. And I feel like as a committee, we've heard an awful lot about that. And then with regards to Regina's question about, targeting kids, what I've learned over this process, when we're talking about tier 1 interventions, we're teaching teachers to intervene with kids. That's a benefit to all children, right? And then there are specific positions like the EL teacher that are going to target those kids with high needs because of their English language, their English learning needs in accessing the curriculum. So for me, as I've heard this and as I've studied this and as I've processed this, it's the full package of helping all students, because all students were impacted by COVID, as well as targeting those students who have had particular, the language that I've been hearing is incomplete learning. And, it's a continuum of learning, right? If a kid breaks their leg when they're learning to walk, they obviously have to sit down for a while. And then when the cast comes off, they may be running before you know it. So I feel like this is perhaps a similar situation. And I know Dr. Gilligan has talked a lot about the research of recovery from other disasters, such as Katrina, and war situations in other countries. But in our country, the Katrina was a very significant year of loss for many, many students, and how that was addressed is a model for how we can work in North Andover.
Thank you, Helen. So I'm hoping I can kind of try to circle back on both of those questions and the responses from Dr. Gilligan and Chair Picard. So specifically this summer, we're talking about, or Dr. Gilligan, you talked about leveraging partnerships and some of the things you talked about. Could you be more specific on this summer, what programming for students is in place for education? I mean, Rick Lawrence programs are amazing. My kids signed up, some are fun, they're awesome. But what additions have we made that are unusual, and what kind of costs are related to those specific additions? And then furthermore, what students are eligible for those things to be prepared for the fall?
Yeah, great question. So when we talk about, and let me just pull it up here. I'm sorry, I'm got my other computer going here. So when we talk about the summer and we talk about, some of the things that we traditionally do, those are all critical. So those are leveraging those partnerships. But what's critical for the schools this year is something that we typically do, but it is needed, is the special education extended school year. What's really unique about the summer would be the Acceleration Academy. So Acceleration Academy will be targeting some of our neediest kids, and that is across all grade levels, and it's in August. And the research is really clear about these academies making a difference, putting a dent, getting kids caught up, and it's really specific and targeted based on the information we have. So they're run a couple weeks in August, the 16th and the 20th, and the 23rd to the 27th. And so the Acceleration Academies, in fact, the state continues to encourage this. They just put out more information today, is focusing on literacy in K-2, mathematics in 3 to 5, focuses on grades 6 through 8, primarily in math, focuses on, at the high school, grades 9 and 10. And this is really highly specialized targeted instruction for some of our, for kids in need. That's not to say in the sense of, who's available and will be able to participate. We'll open up slots there. So that's a unique one.
So how do you define, so I am sorry to interrupt, but how do you define the need, those students that are in need? Just so, for example, is that someone who has an existing identified need, or is that someone, like Ed asked about the differences in testing between the beginning of the year and the end of the year? If it's those that are now just being identified in end of year testing, do they also qualify for that academy?
Yeah, so Lorraine Marks, our assistant superintendent, is working really closely with the principals of the kids of, who is still struggling this year based on, it's a combination of the different assessments. So whether it's DIBELS or it's MAP testing, who are those students in the most need will be identified, and we'll be able to run those. So yeah, we're using the data to inform who we will target for that. Absolutely.
So it's not something that parents can say, I think my kid's behind and needs to sign up for this. This is, you're inviting kids to participate.
We'll be inviting kids to participate, but oftentimes, my experience has been, as someone who's run a summer school, a long time ago, traditional summer school of running, what you think of a traditional summer school for 5 weeks or 4 weeks. It's been a real challenge in the past because people they're on vacation, or they have baseball, or they go here. And what we learned, and why the Acceleration Academy is kind of the targeted, what we want to do is, it's a real challenge finding staff this summer in districts across Massachusetts to teach after the school year. I think that a lot of folks are looking for a break. But to go back to, the beginning of that question, running a summer school, like oftentimes, that need, it may be some of the neediest kids, but then that need may grow to a higher percentage. So if it was, say you took 20%, say we were looking at the bottom 20% for targeted need in grades K-2 and literacy. Well, we might only have 5% that are, available and willing to come, and therefore it opens up many spots so we can continue to work based on our testing to bring more kids into the fold.
So how many kids are eligible total? Like, say everyone who you made an offer to said yes, how many children would that accommodate?
So I don't have the total number. I don't have off the top of my head, because it's really going to be based on, you know, right now we're finalizing staffing and we're looking at these kids. And so we're looking at trying to get smaller class size. But, you know, roughly if you looked at something like, you know, if just say, for example, you took 10% and we have almost 5,000 kids, we'd be looking at servicing, say it was the bottom 10%, you'd be looking at servicing close to almost 500 kids across the district to make an impact. So.
Okay.
Can I follow up on that real quick? Have you, I know you are identifying children within the classroom, you know, based on the testing, et cetera, et cetera. Has there been any outreach to parents to ask them or ask students, like at higher grade levels, maybe in the middle school or the high school, in some sort of like a very benign survey, whether they'd be interested in these academies themselves? I mean, just a general outreach to folks. I mean, because you don't know. I mean, if there might be a huge interest, there might be very small. I was just curious as to whether you've tried to collect numbers in that fashion.
Yeah. So what we're trying to do is really follow the science and the evidence-based scientific things that show that work. So we do know, like, it was really clear, like when we went back to school in March, the last question on the survey, which was filled out by over 3,000 parents, asked about what their concerns were. And so, like, they were these concerns about SEL and about academics and about these components. So I think the focus on the Acceleration Academy, it's critical because we know it makes a difference, right? And in fact, this is what DESE is pushing. And we put this out well before DESE just came out with this, you know, even more information today, encouraging districts to do so. I think that one of the most critical things is that we have academic programming through community programs, we have all these different components. And it's also important to know, like, although some of those may have a fee, if you have free lunch, it's free. If you're reduced, you know, it's half. And there's some really tremendous programming, including Rick Gallant and Excel has something called Ed2Go with the offerings even for adults. But this is why it's been so important to us about these positions and putting them in for the school year, because that's when we have everybody. That's when we have access to everybody to make a difference. And that's the time to do it. So, you know, that's what we're excited about.
So
how many?
Go ahead.
I'm sorry. So how many of these positions are specifically for the summer then?
So summer positions, Jim, if you can go back to the positions we're talking about in that budget line item, those are for the school year. And Dr. Mealy, if you could, yeah, I'm gonna have to pull it up on my own, Jim, because my vision is not so clear on that one.
Which ones of these are just summer or will be doing summer in addition to what I assume is the rest of this year and flowing into the fall? Is that accurate?
So this budget here and these costs, really, these are looking at you know, the professional development, the data work that I talked about and responsive classroom stipends, but we'll be using for the summer a lot of our SO1 money, which is a grant from that we have in order to support the summer programming.
So that's not included in this? Oh, so it's not included in this.
So all right, so I'm clear. So the funds that we're talking about now they only begin in the fall, and there's other pools of money that are being utilized for the summer programming.
Yeah. So
okay.
But there are funds in this that would be used this summer. I mean, the professional development, the training on, you know, the decodables, and some of the. We need some updated curriculum resources to teach to the state literacy standards, and so that's really important. The partnership with Boston College, and then the teacher professional development and growing that practice. Yes.
So I'm sure other folks have questions, so then I'll step back after this last one. But my additional question is, when creating this plan, which I know, and thank you as a parent for taking the time to be so thoughtful about it, what led you to choose to begin or allocate most of these funds to the fall versus trying to put together a more comprehensive, or there already exists, right, a comprehensive summer programming, but in addition to what exists, a even more comprehensive summer program that would focus on some of these other academic areas? Was it based on, and I did watch, a majority of those school committee meetings, so on, data from Katrina and from these other things, or why are we not, just to be frank, having significantly more academic programming in the summer versus starting with utilizing these funds predominantly in the fall?
Can I answer that one?
Absolutely.
Please.
So it has nothing to do with the availability of funds to cover. We're providing in the summer everything humanly possible to cover. It's a matter of what we can get for staffing to provide what we need. So we're going to have the professional development. Okay. We'll be purchasing resources. But the other part of it, logistically, these funds don't get approved until June, and we're already starting to purchase materials and hire staff for the summer. And so we're using the funds that we know we're going to have, which is the grant money for that part. The grant money will also be available for things that we might find we need more than what we have allocated right now. We're getting ESSER 2, which is $1.2 million, and ESSER 3, which is another $2.8 million. So we do have other funds available for many of the other needs we're going to identify as we go along. This is just what we know we're going to need to begin the year.
Thank you, Jim. I'll let someone else ask their question. I know, Thomas, did you have something previously? No, okay. Any further questions about summer programming or Chris? Yep.
So as a parent, could I just then speak to the school administration and say, listen, I have a real concern. I'd like my child to do X, Y, and Z over the summer. I mean, and they're not special. They're not an IEP or anything, but they want to do it. I want them to do it. Is that how a parent should approach this? I mean, if you aren't reaching out to this particular family and saying, hey, your kid looks like they're a good candidate for this little, this program during the summer, could a parent reach out to you and say, hey, could you accommodate me?
Yeah, I mean, we always, if anyone thinks that they need assistance, we always encourage parents to reach out to their school principal to be able to do that. Absolutely.
Okay, that's great. That's wonderful. And by the way, kudos for putting together, for trying to knit this all together. Thank goodness you have some resources to be able to do it. I appreciate it.
And I would just remind everybody too that for all students, Lexia Math and ST Math is going to be available all summer long. The reading program from the library is available all summer long. All these community resources for those kids who are not testing at greatest needs, but whose parents want them to have enrichment over the summer. And, so those are opportunities for all students and all families. And then when the school year gets started, we'll have enhanced programming available for all students.
Yeah, 100%. And I, my hope is that kids start to feel normal again this summer. I mean, it's a really quick change from mask to all of a sudden no mask at recess. It's a really strange feeling of all these rules and regulations we've had. But moving forward, the more normal of a summer we can have with our kids, and particularly enrichment programming and the academic programming, we're really looking forward to them coming back to us in a better place socially, emotionally, with their mental health wise, because that's going to make a big difference. So.
Thank you all. And Jim, especially thank you for your explanation. I think maybe it would be helpful for the committee. I don't know what kind of breakdown. I mean, we see Lynn's a quarterly kind of analysis, and we see some of these documents often in the budget, but I think it might be helpful for us to see a breakdown of funding. At least for me, I haven't dug into that significantly, but the types of grant funding and how we typically are utilizing them. I think that would be a bit eye-opening after your comment to kind of get a better sense of how things are flowing and how the funds are flowing. I think that would be helpful, at least for me. So maybe if it's okay with you, we can circle back on that next week.
Yeah, next week, I think what might make,
so this week, I feel like it's Friday.
Well, what I was just going to say is I think what might make sense is if we can get some clarification on the federal funding that's coming in and what we can use it for, then it will make it clear to us what's available. And I think I could lay it out best when we have the grants, this money and the federal money, and kind of show what's going to be available.
I think that would be really helpful. And I guess that actually is an additional question I had, is really what's kind of, for lack of a better word, plan B for the free cash, right? So do you anticipate, if you can utilize $2.6 million of federal funds for the program you just outlined, if you'll still want to use free cash, if there's other needs that are COVID related or one time that you feel really are appropriate for these funds, would you continue to use those? What would that look like if you did that? Or you would just say, we're going to leave free cash in free cash, we're not going to touch it, this is all we need? How does that look? Or do you have any idea about that?
Well, in general, I can tell you that our goal is to try to fund these without using free cash. So if we can do so with the federal funds for some of these positions, we're pretty confident based on what we've heard so far, like the social worker or the ones that we have, they sound like they might qualify. So positions like that wouldn't come from the free cash, they would come from the federal funding. Some of the grants might cover some of the positions. We have to see what we're going to need those funds for in addition. So I can tell you that the plan is to use as little as possible, but to have it available just in case.
Okay.
And that's been the plan all along, working with the town manager, and again, these are positions to support students, grow capacity with staff, make sure people have the right things in their hands to teach, and to intervene with kids, all kids. So.
Thank you. Any additional questions? I have a question about the school building consultant, or the consultant. I assume that, it's not technically for school building, it's the consultant that was outlined in your presentation. Could you just highlight a bit about the role of that consultant? Because I think it's wonderful to use outside professionals when, to help us as a community. I just want to get clarity on their role and if we'll be using any additional consultants in the future.
Yeah, so oftentimes, school districts are pretty lean. Sometimes ours are, but, it's been a busy year. As you guys know, things have changed rapidly. And, I think Dr. Maley, I don't even think I've given him a day off in the past year. So I think a fresh set of eyes sometimes is really helpful. Someone from the outside, someone that's working with, several other districts. So we were really pleased for his ability to come in and meet with us early on and talk about, what do we need? What are our needs? What is the data telling us? How are we going to assess, if we put these things in place, how we're doing? And is this working throughout the course of the year? And to also have the perspective of, I'm working with 8 or 9 other towns. And, they're, I think in his words the other night, that we probably have one of the most comprehensive programs, something along those lines, in terms of being thoughtful, using all the appropriate information we have to make the best decisions to impact kids, because many communities are talking about these needs, but they don't have a plan or funding to do so at this time. So we're thrilled that we had the consultant come in, and he'll continue to work with us, to assess how we're doing and how things go and what we need and what changes we have to make. Because as we continue to assess and progress monitor, sometimes we have to make mid-course little shifts, tweaks, change direction. And I think that fresh set of eyes is very helpful.
So that consultant was for this additional programming for COVID-related learning loss and those kind of items. That's great. Thank you. And so I previously misspoke. So I guess my question now, because of that, is the school capacity subcommittee has done an awesome job, excellent job. And did they utilize this consultant, or did they have an additional professional on board to help them as well, or is that separate?
Let me turn that over to the coach.
Yeah, two completely different things.
Thank you.
So he's more involved in curriculum, and we have MVG who has been working with us, who are involved in school projects and have been with Massachusetts school projects for many years. So that's what we're using.
And can you, for everyone could you explain MVG and who they are and what they are?
So they're an architect engineering firm that designs additions to schools, renovations to schools. They did the initial assessments to our 4 schools that are going to be the proposed projects coming forward. So you'll see online if you want to. The assessments are there. They're very thorough, but they're also continuing to work with us as we are doing our work right now to choose an option and make a recommendation to the school committee. Then they'll be working with us to help promote that to the community and build support for it.
Okay. And so is there an additional piece, like, so you guys have done an awesome job surveying parents, asking parents what they're looking for. Now we have an architect who does an excellent job understanding the design of a building. Is there another piece, another type of consultant that we're missing to help put all of that together and see like project maybe what our needs as a district would be, or is that not necessary? I mean, I'm not the expert.
No, we're bringing that forward as part of the final report, the needs that we have. And so the consultant, what happens is once the projects the estimates are done for what they could cost, and then we go to town meeting for support, then if you're part of MSBA, you have to go through their process, or you do it on your own, but you get an architect to design. And at that point, you'd be looking at, just as an example, and I've used this example during our public forums, does it make sense to take a school like Kittredge and renovate it and add to it, or does it make more sense to build a new one, which can be done on that site? So those are the kind of questions that come once you get to that stage. We're at the stage right now of picking which option or recommending which option to the school committee and then to the facilities master plan committee. And then the details get worked out as far as what that will look like.
Can I ask, will the consultant help guide the committee as to what option to select? I mean, is he that kind of an active part of that committee? I mean, like, would he actually be in the room in the final presentation of what the committee decides as this is the best option? I just wonder if that's the kind of.
To be perfectly frank, no, that's not what we're asking them to do. That is really our community and any community's prerogative is to decide what direction do we want to go in. Do we want to continue with our neighborhood schools, or do we want to have grade-based schools? Do we want to have 2 middle schools, or do we want to continue with 1 large middle school? So those are the kind of questions we've been trying to flesh out with the community, and that's the direction that we're going in, and using that input to decide what recommendation to make. So the consultants have been there to help us with how to conduct the surveys and how to conduct the public forums and all that, but it's really the community has to decide what it wants to do, and then they'll help us build support for whatever that is.
So it would be after the choice was made, then the consultant will let you know how to implement that decision, like that?
Right. Well, at that point, there's still some details to work out, but it's the big decision that's the community's, and they're going to help us with all the smaller decisions that make up the whole.
Yeah, I don't envy you. That's such a difficult task. Thank you, Jim. Thank you very much.
Yep.
I would just echo Jim, Holly Vitsky Lynch, and all the parents and folks that are on the committee have done an amazing job reporting out the participation in the surveys, the forums, all of that. Really going to be instrumental in moving this town forward to create the best places for teachers to teach and kids to learn. So it's not easy work doing this kind of work, but it's going to pay off. And this level of input from the community, you don't see it in many places. And so they've turned over every stone, and I'm proud of them. So.
Yeah, it's a big task. So thank you all. And I think we're all looking forward to seeing that proposal and interested in the subcommittee's recommendation and kind of what they see as best for our children and what best practices are in other communities, and then how the architect can help shape those in a physical sense. So, okay. Any additional questions regarding the presentation? We kind of pivoted a bit and asked about I asked about the building subcommittee, but any questions from the committee? Okay. Well, I appreciate the presentation very much. If there is any follow-up questions or kind of some of that information we talked about, we'll certainly reach out. Thank you so much, the three of you, for coming. We really appreciate it.
No, guys, thank you. It's always fun visiting with you guys, and thanks for all your support. Have a good night.
Really appreciate your interest.
Thank you, Helen.
Bye.
Good night.
Bye.
Okay. All right, the next item on the agenda, unless there's other further discussion from the committee, is old business. We have no additional old business to discuss tonight. I still would like us to consider the presentation that we heard this evening, and then we'll have a meeting before town meeting to vote a recommendation on the warrant article regarding the free cash appropriation. We may add another meeting between now and town meeting if there's additional information about the federal funds that we feel like we need to hear from the town manager about before town meeting. So kind of that will be up in the air. So there may be a short meeting added to the calendar on a bit short notice between now and then. Otherwise, we'll meet before town meeting. So just wanted to make note of that. Any additional old business from anyone? Okay. Let's move to approve the prior meeting minutes. They're in the Google Drive, and they are from May 4th. I'll let everyone take a minute to review. And then whenever someone's ready, I'll take a motion.
I'll make a motion now while people are reading. I move to approve the minutes of May 4th, 2021, as written.
I'll second that also.
A motion made by Chris Allen, seconded by Donovan O'Connell. I'll take a roll call vote. Ed McMillan.
Yes.
Chris Allen.
Yes.
Dustin Silk.
Yes.
Regina Keene.
Sorry, yes.
Thomas Ringler.
Yes.
Donovan O'Connell.
Yes.
Jennifer Love. She's still on. Jen?
Yes. Can you hear me?
Yes, thank you. Okay. I also vote. The motion has passed. All right. It is now 8 o'clock. We have flown through this meeting. Anything else? If nothing, I will take a motion to adjourn the meeting.
So moved.
Motion made by Chris Allen. Do I have a second?
A second.
Second from Regina Keene. I'll take a roll call vote. Ed McMillan.
Yes.
Chris Allen.
Yes.
Dustin Silk,
Yes.
Regina Keene,
Yes.
Thomas Ringler,
Yes.
Donovan O'Connell,
Yes.
Jen Les.
Yes.
So a vote in the affirmative. The meeting is adjourned. Thank you all so much. Really appreciate it. And I will talk to you soon.
Guys,
Good night, everybody.
Bye.
bye, Regina. We'll see you soon.